Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Emma's Place, Emma no o-uchi. I'm Rod Obian, and I'm joined by my good friend, Chef Yoji Iwakura. Hi, Yoji.
Hello,
You on
how are you
camera?
again?
And so today is November 27th, 2022, and this is our ninth episode. I can't believe it. We've done nine of these. We're
Oh
doing
yeah.
nine of these. So, well, I hope everyone is doing well. And for those who are joining us in America, I think you're still probably still full from Thanksgiving. And,
Mhm.
I know Yoji published or posted a picture of his turkey ramen on Instagram. So I think I would have preferred that over my turkey dinner. No, I shouldn't say that because my family might be angry.
Well,
So,
that's the so I cook turkey and then share turkey, and then at the end I always make turkey ramen from that.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
that's the family tradition now.
I might adapt that to my own family. So, but well, it's good to be here, everyone. And this is a very special episode. We have a guest, our very first guest, Takeshi Matsui, professor of marketing from the School of Business Administration from Tetsubashi University in Japan. He's currently a visiting scholar at Harvard's Yenching Institute, and we're happy to have him talk to us, talk to everyone about his current research, which I find fascinating. And we're going to have a little discussion afterwards. So, Takeshi-san,
Please, please
I'm going to
welcome. Please welcome.
please welcome, Ohio.
Thank you.
Um, and I'll just turn over the Zoom to you, Takeshi-san.
Mhm.
So, um,
Yeah, so thank you very much for your kind invitation, but I'm a little bit nervous because it's my
uh,
really first time to appear on the podcast, so
uh,
I'm not sure that I can.
we're here to support you. Don't worry. We're here to support
Okay.
you. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So, if you want to start with sharing your screen, or you can
Okay.
whatever you
Yeah.
want to do. That's
Yes.
it's
Yes. So I think I might do some introduction of myself first. So I'm as Rose said that I'm at Harvard Yenching Institute for my research project about Japanese cuisine in the United States. But I started my sabbatical here in the United States from February of this year,
Mhm.
and I stayed at New York University. And from February to August, I spent half a year there
Mhm.
to do the field work on that industry. So I interviewed like more than 70 people there, like the chefs or restaurant owners or the management of the grocery stores and so on. So that's why I could be able to meet such a nice guys here. So this is very great honor to me. So we will have some discussion about this project, but before that, I will make a very short presentation. So it might be very casual one. So let me explain my project like, I don't know, 10 to 20 minutes. Okay.
Oh, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Even
Yeah.
more.
Please,
Mhm.
you can
Okay.
speak
Thank
even
you.
more if you want. It's okay with us.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a supermarket sushi I bought in Brooklyn. And
Brooklyn. Wow.
yeah, Brooklyn. Yes. So it was a kind of experiment. So I showed this picture to my mother, who is at 80 years old, living in Hokkaido, Japan. And as I expected, she asked me, "What is this on the above of a sushi?" So she didn't recognize this is also sushi. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah, because the roll is inside out, and there are a lot of sauce on the top
Mm.
of the sushi. So you can't find such a kind of Americanized sushi in Japan. So my mother's reaction is very natural.
Mm.
But I like this kind of phenomenon. So if you introduce something foreign in a different cultural setting, sometimes you have to change something. But if you change too much, it will lose original attractiveness. So it's very difficult for many people dealing with a cultural product.
Mhm.
So sometimes people are asking me that, are you from food studies? But this is not correct. So I'm teaching marketing at a business school.
Mhm.
So I have been interested in the global diffusion of a foreign cultural products. So I give you another example is this. My project is the previous project was about Japanese comics industry in the United States. So in this picture, you can find that English edition here and the Japanese edition is here. So you can see that it's kind of mirror. So flipped. So they just don't not only translating their word into English, but also they flipped every pages because it was 1980s. So
Mm.
the Japanese comics binding on the right side,
Mm.
and you open the pages from left to right.
Oh,
Mm.
Yes. So
makes
because
sense. Makes sense.
yes,
That's
yes, the a lot of books published in Japan written vertically.
Mhm.
That's
Hmm.
why they bind it on the right side.
Mhm.
But in the United States or other Western countries, book
Mhm.
were binding on the left side, and you open from right to left. So especially in the 1980s, nobody knew how to read Japanese comics in a Japanese way.
Mhm.
So that's why they had
Mm-hmm.
to flip every pages and bind it on the left side.
The
So
left side,
yeah,
yes.
yes. So when I was doing this project, I thought that, oh, this is quite similar to sushi.
Mm. Oh, really?
So
Okay.
yeah, as you
Yeah.
know, in this picture, so rolls should be wrapped or rolled with nori seaweed.
Hmm. Yes.
So, but for some reason, the California roll or other rolls in the United States is
It's
rolled
backward.
inside out. So
Yes.
flipping and inside out is kind of similar to me. Yeah. So that's why I started this new project after I finished this
Mm.
comics project.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I asked various questions. So I have a lot of slides, but I don't have a time to explain everything. So let me pick up some important things. So I asked what kind of marketing efforts have been made to attract American consumers to Japanese cuisine. So
Mm.
this is what you should change or what we should not change. So I found the 4 different strategies. So let me explain one by one. So this is the my presentation. So one way is inside out strategy. So there are so many theories about the invention of the California roll. So, but
Mhm.
the popular one is saying that like in 1960s or 70s, at that time, not many Americans knows what nori seaweed paper was, and they hate something black. So that's why Japanese sushi chef hide that nori seaweed paper
Mm.
by making a roll inside out. So this is a one way to cater to American taste.
Mm.
Yeah. And another very popular example is Benihana by Rocky Aoki.
Mm.
He started his first restaurant in New York City in 1964, and his policy was very clear. He never used a slimy ingredients
Mhm.
such as raw fish. So back then in 1960s, so at that moment, the American people don't know to have the idea to have raw fish.
Mm.
That's why Rocky Aoki used only chicken, pork, and shrimp. Yeah. And also Kikoma have been doing a great business here in
Mm.
the States. So the great thing is that they didn't propose that the shoyu or soy sauce is just only for Japanese or Asian cuisine.
Mm.
They try to introduce their products into the Western or Americanized
Mhm.
food culture, such as barbecue.
Mm.
And so one of the things the people here is surprised at is that we don't have teriyaki sauce in Japan. Yeah. I don't want to explain such a kind of things to the professional chef, but teriyaki, yeah, teriyaki is the way to cook some fish,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, especially blue fish like
Mm.
buri. So, but here in the United States, so you have teriyaki chicken, teriyaki beef, or something.
Mm.
So you can say that because we don't have teriyaki sauce in Japan, so teriyaki here is not authentic. This is one way to say, but the you might say that it can be also okay as far as the Kikoma's products is used in the American food culture.
Mhm.
So this is a cater to American taste. So I think there is another very interesting phenomenon here, especially in New York City. So I think you know very well that after 2000, the ramen becomes another new icon of Japanese cuisine.
Mhm.
In addition to sushi, sukiyaki, tempura, and the teriyaki.
Mm.
And so the I'm talking about the side menu called pork buns or pork belly buns. So David Chan of Momofuku started to introduce this pork bun as a side menu, which is not common in Japanese
Mm.
ramen shop. So you can find gyoza or dumpling
Mhm.
ramen shop in Japan, but we don't have such a pork belly buns in Japan. But for some reason, David Chan started to introduce it as a side menu, and it was 2004. And 4 years later, when Ippudo started their business in New York
Mhm.
City, they also included, and they called it Hirata bun
Oh.
because the person in charge of the side menu is Mr. Hirata. So yeah, that's one. And the funny or interesting thing is that because people find that ramen business is very profitable,
Mm.
so many people entered this industry,
Mm.
and many people believe that ramen restaurants should have a pork belly bun as a side menu.
Mm.
So I
I
call
did.
it,
I did.
yeah. Oh, you did.
Yeah. Yeah, I only serve ramen,
Uh-huh.
like 5, 6 kinds of ramen, including a vegetarian ramen
Uh-huh.
and a pork bun, and then vegetarian bun, which is a kimpira.
Mm.
Oh.
These are the
Mm.
only menu.
uh,
No,
yeah.
nothing else. Yeah.
So why did you include the pork bun or the vegetable bun? So did you have some requests from your customers or?
No, for me, I was a chef. I was an owner.
Mhm.
So there's a reason in discussion too. But I made pork bun, my version of pork bun, in one restaurant when I was executive chef, and that
Mhm.
was big sales.
Mm.
Mhm.
So that's one of the reason. Another thing is that to cook gyoza,
Mhm.
you need one person,
I see.
yeah, to do, and also I have to wrap the gyoza every single piece,
Mm.
if you're not using manufactured frozen gyoza,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But we want to serve the fresh ones, only fresh ones, including ramen. And then like the buns are not fresh. Buns are like frozen. It's like fresh
Mhm.
frozen from Hong Kong.
Mhm.
But like we always cook the pork belly, and then my ramen got pork belly at the time, and then a very very heavy pork broth too.
Mhm.
So I really want to focus like one concept, which is it's like even pork, not ground pork, just pork
Mm.
belly,
Mhm.
with ramen, with bun, and
Yeah.
then I know that how much I can sell my pork bun,
Oh,
which it was
sorry,
big
my
sales.
Siri is for some reason. So yeah, please
Yeah,
go
it's
ahead.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, but then I can, if one or two orders, I can cook ramen and bun all by myself.
I see. So operational reason is also
Mm.
So it's all together, marketing and also my
yes.
specialties, and then
Uh-huh.
concept, which I say pork belly. It's like
Mhm.
our ramen shop is not chashu, like it doesn't have chashu. We more like have the pork belly from my
Mhm.
pork bun. The
Mhm.
same pork belly on the ramen. So like concept and then operational reason, marketing and everything, and the
Mhm.
cost, labor, everything.
Mm.
Yeah, so this is very interesting to me because every chef or every entrepreneurs have to decide, for example, in this case, include pork belly bun in the menu or not.
Mm.
So as I wrote in the slides, the Ivan Okin of Ivan Ramen, he had his own restaurant in Tokyo years ago,
Mm.
and he opened a new one in a Lower East Village in Manhattan.
Mm.
So because
Yep.
he
Yeah.
knew the situation in Japan, he
Mm.
hated to include pork bun in the menu. But so many customers, clients asked their servers that, do you have a pork belly bun or not? So finally he gave up and decided to put it on the menu.
Oh, to me, I didn't have to give up
Mhm.
because as you know,
Mhm.
people say Tokyo ramen, but
Mhm.
there was no Tokyo ramen. There's only Yokohama ramen.
Mm.
That's
Oh,
original ramen in the history, like more than 100 years ago.
I
And
see.
then I'm from like near Yokohama.
Mhm.
And then first Chuka guy, Chinatown in
Yeah,
Yokohama
yeah.
has a
Mhm.
lot of shoronpao,
Ah, got it.
tomporo ramen. So
Yeah,
my pork belly ramen's model is tomporo.
I
Mm.
see.
And then my pork bun is kind of version of uh like shorompo
Uh-huh.
Mm.
turning into the my bao. So even it's just pork bao, like momofuku and then whatever else. And then there was not many, or there's almost no pork bao when I first served pork bao, but my version is always say, coming back to the
Mm.
Yokohama Chinatown
Oh, that's
that I
very
that I grew up with. So for me,
okay.
gyoza is, yes, in Chuka Hanten.
Uh-huh.
It's like it's natural, but it's not really how to say, in my life, like gyoza is not really authentic part, because
Oh,
Yokohama
okay.
is famous for shumai,
Yes.
and also all those bao in
Oh,
Chinatown, and the
yeah.
gyoza
Mm.
should be there, but their signature is more like bao,
Uh-huh.
pao, and then in the shumai, and then ramen, and in Chinatown, tomporo. That's my how to say, hybrid ramen, ideas from.
Yeah.
So
It's
for me to serve bao in a ramen shop um is not funny, or it's not fusion.
so it's
And then
natural.
yeah, and then talking about washoku, right?
Mm-hmm.
After sorry, but after Meiji Restoration, those all these food is not washoku. And then
Mm-hmm.
so that means that, like
Mm.
there should be more freedom, and then they should have more cultural interaction, just like Chinatown in
Mm-hmm.
Yokohama. But some say, oh, gyoza, like ramen with gyoza. I admit, yeah, it's like Japanese people love the ramen with gyoza,
Mm.
but
Mm-hmm.
that's not my eating habit in my childhood.
Mm.
Yeah, there are a lot of interesting points. So, for example, some people believe that ramen is not washoku. So I have opportunity to interview the woman who edited a very big book written by Shizuo Tsuji,
Mm,
the owner of the
Mm.
Tsuji
Sujicho.
Culinary Institute.
mm,
Yep.
And
mhm,
his English edition cookbook was published in 1980.
Hmm.
And some people is saying that still it is a very basic book for the Japanese cuisine published in the United States. And it was 1980, so they didn't include ramen in the Tsuji's cookbook because the ramen was considered not Japanese at that moment.
mm,
From American
Mm.
perspective, I mean. Yeah.
Mm. For me, it's just a very straight, clear cut line.
Mm-hmm.
The word washoku
Mm-hmm.
appeared because we start saying yoshoku.
Okay.
That's it. I
Different.
I I not I'm not how to say distinguish between this cuisine, that cuisine.
Mm,
Washoku came later than yoshoku, which is yoshoku is Nihon shoku
mm,
inspired by Seo ryori, which is
mm,
mhm,
European cuisine. That's the in this washoku renaissance or washoku house coming up. That's the very like a huge statement that I make.
mm,
I see.
But it's nothing about the other, which is right, which is wrong. And then
mm,
in Washoku, there's a history too. So that's why I started with history because I don't want to say some like just like Kaiseki last episode. Like
mm,
people don't even know like two kaisekis and then what's behind and all that stuff. And totally different two kaiseki. The
Mm,
letter is different, culture is different, and then the form is different, system is different, but purpose is different.
mm,
But that's all in Washoku. So that's another story. But the word Washoku was created because, naturally created because Yoshoku came out, which is Nihon Shoku. So I would say to me, ramen is Nihon Shoku.
mm. I
I mean,
see.
I don't wanna speak about the whole history right now, but ramen created as a Nihon Shoku, but it's
Yeah,
not Washoku.
I see.
mm, mhm,
And then even the part of sushi too. After
Mm,
Edo period, Edo era, it's
mm,
like from Meiji to especially Showa,
mhm,
even including all these omakase is modern culture,
mm,
which is Nihon shoku. Sushi is washoku, but omakase style is more like Nihon shoku.
I see.
That's the position I take. So it's not about cuisine itself. Cuisine is cuisine. That's from washoku, and then part of the katsudon, the rice part in the ichiju. Later, I ask you about ichiju sansai, but
Uh-huh.
katsudon is like those
mm,
donburi is like ichiju sansai all in one bowl.
Oh
Let's say.
yeah.
So in a way, it's washoku, but katsu is not washoku because it's more like a yoshoku.
mm.
Yes. Yes.
So the katsudon itself is a washoku concept from washoku. That's my position.
Yeah.
Sorry for interruption, but
No, 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 no. This is interesting because David Chan said that he got the idea to have a pork bun from the idea of um Peking duck. When
uh-huh.
you
Mhm,
eat Peking duck, you use some bun.
Yes, yes.
mm,
So that's his explanation, but
Mm, I
and
agree.
yeah, it become very popular here in the United States. Chinese, some Taiwanese American
mm,
was not comfortable with David Chan's pork belly bun because this is what Taiwanese called guabao.
mm,
So,
Mm.
they have such a kind of pork bun in
mm,
their history. So the Korean American created this menu in Japanese, so-called Japanese restaurant.
mhm.
The Said it was from Peking or Beijing.
Yeah.
The Taiwanese are saying different things. So
Oh.
I don't know, four different cultures get
Uh-huh.
together. So it's like the same with your discussion about the yoshoku or washoku. So
Mm, mhm,
yeah, and the
Mm.
katsudon have in only one bowl, you have a different mix of the different cultures. So yeah,
I would say the same if he declare
uh-huh.
like not in washoku but like in a Nihon shoku restaurant for Ippudo. I'm no sorry, a Momofuku,
Mhm,
or say Taiwanese restaurant.
Mm.
mhm.
I would say the same, but he put, I mean, he named his restaurant as a noodle shop for reason.
Yes.
Like when he say the concept was from ramen shop in Japan, and then
Mhm,
he was really fascinated, and then
mhm,
he really wanted to do like it's like everything in one bowl and the people satisfied because
mhm,
I'm satisfied with it. There's no such a culture in United States, and then
mhm,
Mm.
ramen is just packaged cheap, and then I mean it's okay, but instant food. So he
yeah.
wanted to introduce the culture, but then he knows that he's very smart, but like I say smart enough to know that it's not going to be welcome in the United States, because for us ramen soup is not soup, it's a soupy sauce,
Mhm,
Mm.
and that's why we slurp. Now American people slurp, that's great, but at the time I don't think they will. So he didn't think that. So
mhm,
so that's why he called, and also he create more like noodle soup, which I do too, which means that the soup intensity is a little less, so that
mhm,
people can drink,
mhm,
and actually
Mhm.
people can warm up like their body, so it's more satisfaction there. And
mhm.
then that's the concept he set, and then that's why he called um noodle shop, noodle
Mm.
soup, for
Mhm.
his product.
Mm.
Yeah.
So he assigned himself as a fusion chef,
Mhm,
fusion
mhm.
restaurant. So I think that's good,
Yes.
because there's no confusion
Mhm,
between people too. Like my big frustration sometimes is declare big, which um, I talk to myself too sometimes.
mhm.
If declare a huge statement and then not really doing that is really harmful sometimes in the culture. So
Yeah, so yeah, so what you explain is like the kind of cultural translation. So if you say the noodle restaurant, noodle shop, or so instead of Japanese restaurant, so because I think David Chan knows the American taste
Mm.
and the food culture in Japan as well. So I sometimes call such a kind of people, or including you, so gatekeeper. So because you know different cultures and you know the which is better way to introduce something to the other culture people or other countries people. So
Mm.
yeah, there are various way. So ramen is also same. So I didn't realize that the ramen spoon or renge often bigger than those in Japan because the American people, yeah, as you said, now
hmm,
many people can slap noodles, but
Mm.
it's very difficult for them. So they put a noodle on the spoon first and put the noodle into the mouth using that spoon. So some of the restaurant owners are calling that the spoon is a small bowl.
Mm.
And also
hmm,
the I sometimes I heard that some restaurant tried to make the noodle shorter than those in Japan.
hmm. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
did you do that?
I didn't do it, but like we collaborate with Ippudo. Ippudo made
Hmm.
our noodle
Hmm.
for a year and a half,
I
and then
see.
we had a lot of discussion, and that's the always the point of discussion: how
Hmm.
thick, and then the shape, and
Hmm.
also length, and then the
Hmm.
length for like mainly for customer, like
Hmm.
how customer can comfortably slurp
Hmm.
the noodle. And also in America, like it's like when we go into ramen shop,
Hmm.
we'll have this kind of attire, like
Hmm.
it's like a t-shirt and stuff. And then some people like in here too, but it could be like no, it's like people could be dressed up
Mhm.
coming to ramen shop, and then like
Yeah.
if they slurp with a long noodle, that can be trouble sometimes.
Mhm.
Right? It's
Yeah,
not
I
it's not
can.
just about food, especially restaurant. We gotta be
Mhm.
responsible for whole experience.
Mm.
Yeah, this is a slide when ramen instead of ramen was
Mm.
Yes, yes.
introduced in
Yeah, yeah,
1970s. Yeah.
yeah.
So, at that moment, as shown in this article, Japanese noodle as first food. So same concept in Japan. So you order a bowl of ramen and waiting for 5 minutes, and the bowl arrive, and you slap in a 5 or 10 minutes
Mm.
and make a payment and go out. So this is very fast food concept at that moment. But
Mm.
especially after Momofuku and Ippudo phenomenon, the
Mhm.
ramen is becoming, as you said, the place, the restaurant is a place for the visiting for some good dinner or good lunch, from starting from the appetizer to dessert
Yep,
with some good alcohol or some drink.
yep.
Mm.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I love I love the place.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like quite similar to other cuisines such as Italian or other things,
Mhm.
some good Mexican restaurants as well. So some people try to adapt the food or menu to
Mhm.
cater to American clients, but they also don't change some part of this. So one example is that even if you offer the bigger spoon or the shorter noodles, you don't change the ramen sauce. So because of the flavor. So you have to decide, as I said, again and again. So some people try to change something, but they don't change other parts. So
Mm.
I think this is very difficult decision for any kind of the people in that industry, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like talking about Ippudo, a
Mhm.
second Ippudo in New York. I visited first Ippudo when they opened, and then I visited probably in a couple months from opening
Mhm.
uh of the second Ippudo.
Mhm.
To be honest, menu was unbalanced. Like it's like no, they try to pursue like a little like kind of upscale high end
Mhm.
izakaya with ramen. Their ramen is always great though, by the way.
Mhm.
Um, but I visited again after 3 years or so. The menu is so great. It's
Mhm.
izakaya, but not only izakaya. And
Mhm.
then adapt to another culture has another aspect.
Mhm.
After 3 years, right? So when we visit, I mean, we'll probably treat it very good, but we order everything. We know how to order too, but waiter knows how to control timing. So we get appetizer, we get second appetizer,
Mhm.
we get salad or something, and then
Mhm.
as a main dish they brought the ramen,
Mhm.
and I'm so sure they just cook ramen in 2 minutes,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
they waited until that timing.
Ah,
That wouldn't happen um, with almost any ramen shop or ramen restaurant, ramen izakaya,
mhm.
if there is in Japan,
Mhm.
because there's no such a like course service culture in Yoshoku.
I see.
While they do in Chakaiseki and then even Pari Kaiseki.
Mhm.
And then Honzen Ryori is all at once. The Ryokan Kaiseki Ryori is all at once. Like, it's almost like
Mhm.
catering food. Um, so there's no such a like it's like how to say many tasting course food culture in Japan. While European has or developed
Mhm.
course tasting course culture. So I think Ippudo second, especially second Ippudo adapted to the culture in a good way, and even it's like improved their concept
Mhm.
to the Western
Mhm.
culture. That's what I'm
So
saying.
yeah, so the communication of the server, the communication skill of the server is also very important.
That's important, but it's got to be whole, like whole system
I see. Yes.
pursue the goal.
Uh-huh.
The waiter is like line cook to
Uh-huh.
execute the product
Mm-hmm.
service as a product.
Mm-hmm.
But restaurant has to have a system. Restaurant has to learn like how to do it, because Western restaurant doesn't do it because they don't serve ramen. It's like
Yeah.
some Western ramen izakaya type of restaurant doesn't do it. And then Ippudo did it. That was amazing. I mean, we did it too, but only pork bun and then ramen. It's easy, right?
Uh,
But they have all those like shishito, and then something on skewer, and then
uh-huh.
all these appetizers,
Yeah.
and then it serve
So
as the
the whole process of the customer's experience are designed well.
yeah, and then it's not tasting course. It's more like based on, let's say, washoku culture back in the Chakaiseki,
Mm-hmm.
when Honzen Ryori turned into the Chakaiseki Sennorikyu, try to introduce like warm food as warm, cold food as cold.
I
That's
see.
what it's like people. I mean, Japanese people can try to do.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of tasting course culture, so it's not really tasting course. We
Mm-hmm.
provide food or dishes when it's in the right time, the right temperature, in the
Mm-hmm.
right mood.
I
And
see.
then they realized that was beautiful. I was so impressed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's another way. Like you still having Japanese culture even from traditional time in
Mm-hmm.
washoku time, I would say.
Mhm.
But serve as the Western culture.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting because I don't associate their service the design of the service to the history of Japanese cuisine in Japan. So this is really educational to me. So that's good.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I mentioned something about communication because another strategy is the mother of the communication. So the first two strategy I explained is some change of the material, but the third one is how to explain, how to communicate with American clients. So one of the example I like is that when I interviewed the owner of Izakaya restaurant in Manhattan, so he's a Korean immigrant. He moved to Texas in his childhood and raised there, but he now have his own restaurant in Manhattan. And his restaurant, as I said, is izakaya or Japanese tapas restaurant,
Mhm.
and they serve really good skewered chicken or yakitori.
Mm.
And when we had a discussion, what he said is if he wants to have another izakaya restaurant in Texas,
Mm.
he has to include the menu of sushi in that izakaya restaurant in Texas because the not many people in Texas know the concept of izakaya, Japanese
Mm.
tapas restaurant, and they also don't know what a yakitori is.
Mhm.
So you should include something familiar with them. In this case, sushi.
Mm.
So
That,
people might
that's
need it. Yes.
that's interesting that you I mean, and that's how I explain what a izakaya is to a lot of Americans.
Okay.
It's a tapas because they don't
Uh-huh.
understand that. Which I mean, it's entirely different. I've
Yeah.
traveled quite extensively in Spain. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a similar experience, but it's interesting that you how you explain it in that sort of and it doesn't. There's not a big leap
Mhm.
from you know for people. You know, they instantly understand that. But it's also interesting. Is that particular to Texas then? The inclusion of sushi. I mean, or just the right as you were mentioning about sushi. Was that particular to Texas or how about to mishear you? Because when you were talking to the owner of the izakaya, he
Mhm.
wanted to expand to Texas.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry.
so my point is like, so people know sushi at least.
Mhm.
So people might visit to eat sushi there.
Oh, so that's the enticement to come.
Yeah, so
Okay,
this
yes.
is door opener.
Mm,
So and once you attract your customers, clients by selling sushi,
mhm,
you can recommend them to have yakitori or chicken
mm,
skewers.
mhm,
So in the beginning, you might recommend some the regular meat
mm,
of yakitori first, and next time you can recommend something more deep. I mean, there's some organs like chicken.
mhm,
So you can invite the customers inside and inside. So this is the teaching unknown things with
mm,
known things. And I had a various opportunity to listen to this kind of discussion from the
mhm,
restaurant owners or the professional chefs, and I also find a very old document like this. So this is the document pamphlet issued by Japan Travel Bureau
mm,
in 1946, because the Japan Travel Bureau wanted to attract American tourists to Japan
mhm,
just after the World War II. And as shown in this the book, so they try to introduce 5 different Japanese cuisine: kabayaki, sukiyaki, tempura, and soba, back with no.
mm,
And lastly, they tried to explain what sushi was, but at that moment nobody know what sushi was,
mhm.
so they translated sushi as fancy rice bowl. So yeah,
True, true.
I
Yeah,
don't
and
know.
yeah, it is true.
Fancy. It's fancy.
It's
Yeah,
fancy. Yeah,
I
Fancy,
think so.
yeah,
yeah.
Taste
and
fancy
also
too.
yeah,
Even
and it's,
authentic one, it's
yeah.
taste fancy.
So, but you know, at this moment, everybody knows the word sushi.
Mm, that's true. That's
So
true.
I think the knowledge might be very different people by people. So
Mhm,
some people even just know the inside out roll is sushi, but other people knows the nigiri sushi or other sushi
mm,
concept very
mhm,
well.
mhm,
But there must be a variance of the level of the knowledge even now. But that at least everybody knows what sushi is. But at that
mhm,
moment, I might say that nobody knew. So you need to explain something really unknown things.
mhm.
So that's why, as shown in this slide, so sushi is explained as a Japanese counterpart of the European sandwiches. Yeah,
Yeah, that's it's a
yeah,
really good comparison. I like
yes.
that.
Sandwich have 3 layers.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, sushi has a 2 layer.
Mm, mhm.
So yeah, it's very strange from the current point of view that saying that sushi is a Japanese counterpart of the European sandwiches, but at that moment, you had to explain in such a way.
Mm,
So this is quite similar to the sushi in izakaya in
mhm,
Texas. So I find some similar things. So as you mentioned, I use the word tapas for
mhm.
explain izakaya. This is also the way to use a metaphor.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
precisely
agree.
speaking, yeah, as you said, that the Spanish tapas and the Japanese
Mhm,
izakaya is very different, but
mhm.
sometimes you have to do that.
No, it's no. I mean, I guess that's, and then we can talk about that later. It's sort of
Mhm.
the the role of the gatekeeper to introduce, but maybe I'll ask if we have time. It was something we talked about earlier, is that the gatekeepers here in America, at least, and I know, I would say most of them are not Japanese, you know? And so I guess how do you, well, how do I mean, I can ask you this question too. How do you feel that the people spreading, you know, Japanese food, culture, food aren't Japanese, you know? And you know, and that's a lot of opportunities there, but then there are people who are not familiar with the, you know, directly familiar with the culture. So I don't know. That might be a difficult question to answer, but
Yeah.
it's kind of curious to me because you know, most of my good friends who run Japanese style restaurants, you know, in New Hampshire, I don't live in the big metropolitan area. Yeah, they're, you know, they're either from Taiwan or you know, China or Korea, and so I mean the food is perfectly fine for, you know, but they don't have a direct connection to Japan, and so the gatekeepers here, at least in America, often aren't Japanese, and so I don't know how. I think that's part of your research and sort of in
Yes.
looking you know, looking at that, you know, that phenomenon. But because I, you know, for me, it's interacting with Yoji. It's yeah, he's a chef, but he's also Japanese. It's a very rare thing to find a Japanese chef. I mean, maybe pretty common in California or New York City, but in New England, I mean, maybe a handful of people, and so his approach is certainly, yeah, I would say, different from my other friends who run Japanese style restaurants. So, but
I try to fill the gap.
Mhm.
I was growing up with Yoshoku. You know,
mm,
it's like my washoku approach is almost like American chefs
mhm,
do.
Mhm.
But as a Japanese, and I grew up in Japan, right? So I try to fill the gap means that if anything important missing in our Japanese restaurant or Japanese food culture in
mhm,
New England, that's where I can feel.
mm,
It's not about what I want to do, what I want to say. It's more like what I feel the gap.
mhm,
So it's gonna be better. That's what I'm thinking always.
mm.
So not criticizing other people. Only
Oh,
thing I blame sometimes is like how to say, try to sell. I mean, which is fine. We need rice work, right? But saying big thing and then say like, oh, we are authentic, blah blah blah. Um, it's still okay when they do fusion in the point where Takeshi-san says. But
mm,
if they don't learn a lot, they just like, if they just copy from somebody or
mhm,
some Japanese chef or somebody, and then they say, oh, this is real. I
mhm,
mean, do you know why is it like this? Did you practice enough? I mean, I
Mhm.
don't say, I practice now always. Like, I have to keep
mhm,
practicing. That's one thing. Have to keep practicing,
mhm,
and then have to keep learning, have to keep studying, and then that leads to history in Japan. And then it's like people, even industry people, even chefs don't want to listen.
mhm,
But that's what I like because of passion. Like for
mhm,
like with my passion, I learn. It's not about like I've known that, I've known that from my childhood. No,
mhm,
I studied later because of passion. And if no passion
mhm.
and do fusion, it's just a fusion. And then it probably doesn't taste good. And then sometimes it's not healthy because everything comes out from
Mhm,
bottles with high fructose corn syrup. And then MSG is fine, but a lot of MSG. And then with other chemicals, 200 chemicals. That's big issue in Japan right now.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't want to really talk about this too much because that comes across with the 7-Eleven. So,
Yeah,
I
no,
mean, it's like
yeah.
yes or no, the kind of stuff. I don't. I'm not really. It's like willing to argue like around there. But just
Mhm,
saying that I grew up with those kind of chemicals, and then my body was abused. because of
Mm,
that.
Mm.
mm,
I got more healthier living in the United States somehow.
mhm,
Why?
mhm,
Why? We
Yeah.
have to know about it, you know.
mhm.
So
Oh,
so that's my position. It's not like, hey, Japan is great, Japan is the best. I'm not
Uh,
saying that. But like, just like I said, Washoku, came out like after Yoshoku.
mm,
Washoku, the word Washoku create because of Yoshoku.
mhm,
And then it's the same thing. Like once we say authentic, we want to know what's authentic. We want to know what's Washoku.
mhm,
And then talking about Japan, 7-Eleven, we don't have to say, well, 7-Eleven food is bad and blah, blah, blah. No, like we have to look into more and then what's okay, what's not, and then
mhm,
why. And then that's the ongoing discussion to provide
mm,
the good stuff to people because, it comes down to like food in the food industry. It's not for us to be like, hey, like I'm a star chef,
mhm,
or our company is the best. It's all about the serving hospitality through
mhm,
food, to
mhm,
people. But to do so, we need to study, and
mhm,
along the study and learning, we should find more. So after those marketing um, um, trial and effort, there's always having next step.
mhm.
And then my positions is to try to do the next step always. And then sometimes too far, so I have to get back, so too much. I talk to myself, hey, you're too much.
But as for the artificial additives, or this is big issue here in the United States.
Mhm,
So this is not the big in Japan as far as I know. So I found that many chefs, including that Korean izakaya owner,
mhm,
are very careful about that. So they make like the tare for the sauce for yakitori. They made it from scratch using
mhm,
authentic ingredients. So this is very important to do this kind of business here in the United
mhm.
States.
I
And
agree.
also,
Yes.
as for the non-Japanese owners or chefs
Mhm,
here doing Japanese food business, um, it's yeah. What I'm interested in is that, considering the population size of Japanese here in the United States,
mhm,
the existence of the Japanese cuisine is really outstanding,
mm.
right?
Mm,
That's
mm,
simply because,
Absolutely. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
it's not just the power of the Japanese, the attractiveness of the Japanese cuisine, or that just because so many non-Japanese have entered
Mhm.
Japanese cuisine business. So that's why this is the point I'm interested in.
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah.
No, I think we had talked earlier. I just made a comparison. I
Mhm.
said at a dinner party last night. Just casual conversation.
Mhm.
Foods that we talk about: Italian food, pizza,
Mhm.
Chinese food, and sushi.
Mhm.
Sushi, and it's just I don't imagine having that conversation 30 years ago where sushi was just you know ordinary. Just people. That's part of their everyday week. And I'm sure Yoji is experiencing that's what people want every week. And I don't remember, I grew up in America,
Mhm.
that being the case 30 years ago. So I think it just, as you were saying, Takeshi-san, that for the size of the Japanese population in America, the food footprint of Japanese cuisine is quite amazingly large. And so
Mhm.
wherever I go in the US, it seems you know, uh, sushi is just as common as a sandwich. Okay, I like that metaphor. It's as common as a sandwich.
Mhm.
So
finger food, right?
finger food, but it's not. I mean, I had the advantage. I grew up in Hawaii a bit, and we had a Takashimaya department store. My mother would bring me downstairs where you could eat. And so I grew up with a little background, but that's just me. And so, yeah, it's quite amazing how the food culture has really spread through America, and to your point, Takeshi-san, about ramen. I mean, it's if you want any gatekeeping food, that's the one. If you want to introduce new things, you start with the ramen, and go from there. Now, earlier we were talking, Yuji was talking about the 7-Eleven. I don't know if we'll have time to talk about that today, but there's an interesting concept in keeping with your notion of a gatekeeping, not an individual, but a gatekeeping entity. And so I'm kind of fascinated how a convenience store, 7-Eleven, which I don't know if people know, it's Japanese owned. And if you go to Japan, they're everywhere, everywhere. And I grew up in America. That was something in my childhood experience, but having gone to Japan not so long ago, just the 7-Elevens in Japan are nothing like the 7-Elevens here in America. So the sort of idea of bringing that sort of convenience store, Japanese convenience store, 7-Eleven to America intrigues me. And so it sort of appeals to as you were discussing in your research and in Yoji's, efforts to spread Japanese cuisine, Washoko cuisine, how a convenience store could help that, Anyway,
Yeah.
so we keep interrupting you, Takeshi-san. I guess keep you.
So I think
You're not going to get to your presentation.
close,
Go ahead.
Move
Sorry.
move on.
Move on. I'm sorry.
No,
We're a
no.
bunch of chatterboxes.
Let me finish. Only
Okay, I'm
two
sorry.
slides.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the how to cope with the situation in the United States. So this is the last way. So introduction of authentic knowledge and materials. So I said that sometimes using metaphor is a good way to communicate, but this is also making a misunderstanding. The typical example is rice wine. So sake was called rice wine for many years, but the people I interviewed or who try to introduce authentic knowledge and authentic sake to the United States said that the sake is not rice wine because it was not made from a grape. So sometimes you have to explain the right knowledge, not right things. But as we saw, it's very difficult and limited opportunity. And one of the limited opportunity might be the omakase restaurant, because the in the United States, omakase restaurant decides the menu by them. I mean the chef or restaurant, and except some the food programs with the clients, everybody eat in the same order. Same thing, same order. And they run some knowledge from the sushi chef, the over the counter. So this is quite limited opportunity, but in such a case, you can deliver something authentic. But this is the last one, so I will close my sharing. So sometimes if you want to introduce something authentic, you have to persuade regulatory organization such as FDA. Yeah, so the Mr. Kuraoka of Restaurant Nippon, who started a restaurant business in 1963, Restaurant Nippon is still having the business here in New York City. So this is really great. So he spent 5 years to persuade FDA to import the toxic torafugu. Yeah, so I think this is really great. He's a great entrepreneur. Yeah, so the introducing authentic knowledge is really tough sometimes. So yeah, this is the end. So I think we can see the face each other. So maybe stop the sharing.
Yeah, this regulatory
So
authority part is important too. About it's like you just talk about the rice wine. Why it's rice wine? It was rice wine wasn't probably only because of the marketing purpose, because of regularly between. And now I think New York City's almost allowing the shochu in the it's like a
Yeah.
sake or wine and
Mm.
beer category, right? But
Mhm.
that was always issue. So that's why we only had the choya ume wine, not
Mhm.
umeshu, ume wine. And then
Mhm.
actually creating plum wine instead of umeshu
I
because
see.
of regularly. And then later they brought the umeshu from Japan and it's sold as a liquor,
Mhm.
Mm.
like hard liquor.
Mhm.
Even alcohol contents is low. That's always the the controversial between the liquor and the wine, and why you can serve this, why
Mm.
we cannot serve this. And then finally New York declared that hey, we're gonna accept the shochu as the part of sake.
Mm.
Maybe a little uh grace with
Mm.
the alcohol percentage maybe, but when Chartreuse can be served as a liqueur, I don't know what it's gonna be, but like regulation is always the matter.
Mm.
Yeah, so New York Japanese Restaurant Association was very active to make a shochu available.
Mm.
Yeah, easier available in restaurants. So yeah, this is very important part of the food
Yeah,
culture.
Mhm.
revolutionary to me.
Yeah, yes, yes. Okay. Yeah, thank you
Well,
very much.
well,
Oh,
thank
thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing. So I think I guess we have some time for some questions. I know we've and I apologize. We sort of um, just interrupted when we it was an interesting point and but I thought it was pretty good to just have a conversation with you, Takeshi-san. I I guess well. I think we maybe have a few questions we can ask, and
Mhm.
don't worry, I can split this episode into two, so it won't be as long. So we can share it that way. But I'm wondering, well, maybe this is not a fair question, but just from your research, where do you think of the future of Japanese cuisine in America is going? That
Um,
is,
the kind of big question. So
it's a big question. I
That's
know. I
what I
don't
was
know.
saying.
Maybe
It's like,
I,
is that a
it's like,
first question, Wally? Come on.
what am I gonna ask? Because I don't. I'm not a
Let's start
chef,
from the
Yoji. I can't ask
let's
him.
start from okay.
Okay, let's
Let me
say.
start. Let me start. You
Oh,
take
you
care of the
start. Okay, I'll
final
let you
question.
start because I
That's like,
can't ask him the
oh wait.
questions you. Well, why not? He's been to New York. He's been to Boston. He's gonna go to Hawaii at some
Oh,
point, so
but
he's gonna know what the. What I want to ask. He's the expert. I don't
let
know
me
anything.
ask
Okay,
couple
you ask a
questions.
question. Maybe it'll. Okay, I apologize. You don't
No,
have to
no.
answer that question. You can think
yeah,
about
that's
it. Maybe you
important
can
question.
publish your next book about the future. Go ahead, Yoji. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay.
Go.
So
You go.
so you've been to New York and Boston.
Yes.
What is like a processing growth? In any point that you spoke about, like marketing or like restaurant or customers knowledge, and then also process. Customer knowledge doesn't mean just right now or like 10 years ago. It must be in line of the process, just like you introduced the like sushi as the Japanese sandwich and stuff.
Mhm.
So there's always on the process. They're not only people or chefs, regulation, just like
Mhm.
we just spoke about it. So what's the main difference between New York and then Boston in the process? Because we always have the issue to introduce the
Mhm.
Japanese or maybe exotic culture
Mhm.
in Boston. And
Mhm.
then people, by the way, people always compare Boston to New York.
Mm,
Oh.
So that's like if Boston is totally separate community and then people
Uh-huh.
don't care about New York, we'll find we can develop in our own pace. But
Mhm.
I went to New York and this was great and so authentic, nothing like this in Boston.
mm,
Mhm.
But then once I do it, and how many customer comes to me to have it?
Mhm.
mm,
People can go to New York to have it.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
so there should be some big gap between the New York and Boston, but
Mhm.
I can speak in my point of view, but but I would like to ask you, in your point of view, marketing or like whatever is your research
Yeah,
and
yeah.
also feeling that you get.
Okay. Yeah, because I moved to Boston in middle of August, so I spent like 3 months. Yeah, so I don't have clear understanding on the situation here, but as for the New York City, so I think two things I might say first. The first thing is that, as you know well, so there are so many different kind of ethnic cuisine available in New York City. So they compete only not only within the same category, but also
Mm.
across the category. Like some good Mexican are competing with some good Japanese restaurant.
How?
Because yes, because some people, especially foodie, want to eat something special,
Oh.
Ah,
want to
okay.
have a very good restaurant experience. So in such a case, why not Mexican this time? Why not Japanese? Why not Italian? So sometimes across the categories, there is a competition. This is not my impression. What the people I
Mm.
interviewed said so.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Mm.
so
Yeah.
ramen does not necessarily compete with other ramen restaurants. So sometimes they compete with other uh, ethnic cuisine as well.
Mm, mm,
What
This-
what's the point people talk
mm,
talk about in that competition in them
so
between the
you
cross culture or
cross
cross
culture, yes.
ethnic cuisine and
Because the availability of the various ethnic cuisine is exceptional in the New York City compared to other cities, especially
mm,
to the rural area.
mhm,
So you are exposed to such a different kind of things. So
yeah, I know, but what's the how customer compare one Japanese restaurant and then one Mexican restaurant?
yeah, but I think it's from my point of view that the okay tonight let's go to Italian, but
mhm.
next week let's go to Japanese. So
Yes.
yeah, to me it's quite natural
Mhm,
because I don't have to eat the every week. I don't have to eat a specific ethnic cuisine like Japanese or
mhm,
I
mhm,
see, I
yeah,
see.
yeah. So yeah, this is quite common idea for I mean the eaters,
mhm,
consumers, but the variety and the availability is super exceptional in New York City. So this is
mhm,
yeah what I heard many times. So the within category competition is also very important. The sushi restaurant compete with other sushi restaurant, but you have to think more broad way.
mhm,
Yeah. So this is called it's not a business group, but sometimes we call it marketing myopia.
mm,
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
mhm,
yeah, this is very common idea in marketing. So the some anecdote told us that when like in 1950s in the United States, so because the diffusion of TV become higher and higher at that moment,
mhm,
so that's why people stop to visit a movie theater.
mhm,
You know, TV and the movie is technically different service or
mhm,
different.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but in terms of the entertainment, they are competing.
Mm.
mhm,
Yeah, so so different technological orientation things can be competed in the same market if we would define it in a broad way. So such as
Mm.
entertainment instead of the movie or film or TV.
mhm.
So yeah, when I heard the story, what I came to my mind is the marketing myopia thing. So
Mhm,
so that's why Japanese can be beaten by other cultural cuisine,
mhm.
exotic cuisine in the situation of the New York City. So yeah, this is a very um interesting point. Yeah.
So it's not again in New York. It's it's competition not with just other Japanese
Mhm.
restaurants, but it's competing against cuisines. That no, I know you haven't been here so long in Boston area. What impressions have you had about uh, the food scene here in Boston so far?
So I think this is a matter of the, I don't know how to say, but the such a kind of things might be happening here in Boston as well, but the extent is different. I don't know how to say, yeah,
Maybe
because
the
the market
scale?
here is
Yeah.
smaller than
Yes,
in New
it's
York
smaller.
City. Yeah.
No. Um, but yeah, I just so you know, there's always been a great rivalry between Boston and New York, not just for baseball, but just in many things. So I do. So I well, do you have a questions for us? I know I promised that you could ask us questions. I mean, and you
Oh,
have and I
but
don't know so much.
I
Yoji
want
knows more.
yeah, I want to ask this question to you, the difference between the Boston and New York City. So yeah, because
Uh,
I know the situation in New York City, but I don't know the situation here in Boston. So
of I think Yoji can speak more to because he lives there. But
um,
just traditionally, there's as far as I can remember, there is a rivalry. Boston area, I mean, in New England, so that has the highest percentage of people with college degrees. So in
yeah.
America, so so what you can take from that is there's a lot of people who are well educated, but I would also say people who are more culturally educated traveled, and so
Mhm.
which surprises me because I would think Boston would have similar food culture to do that in New York. I Yoji and I just been back from Montreal. We went there. He went on vacation. I was there to present a paper, and uh, you it's very close by, and the food culture there, I think, is more akin to New York City. And so I've always wondered why Boston, for me at least, this is my opinion. Yoji can disagree with me. It just seems a little more. It's smaller than New York, but it's a little more conservative in the sense, not that you don't see as many. I don't see as much diversity in cuisine. So um, yeah, so having
Oh,
Yoji in Boston is a very exciting thing for a lot of people, but for me at least. But it's a scale that's smaller. But but it's surprising. There's so many people. You're at Harvard. I'm sure there's a lot of people, who are and very knowledgeable about different kinds of cuisines. But it's tiny, and it surprises me all the time. Compared to going to New York or Montreal, which is pretty close by. And yeah, so I'm curious to see what you find in your research and and
yes.
sort of
Another
trends.
thing I
Mm,
forgot to mention is that there had been a very strong demand by Japanese corporation for authentic Japanese restaurant
mm,
in New York City.
mhm,
So I told you that the Mr. Kuraoka created Restaurant Nippon in
mm,
1963.
mm,
The one of the reason that the industry people such as Akio Morita, who is the
mhm,
co-founder of Sony,
mm,
asked the Kuraoka-san to make an authentic Japanese restaurant because he had to entertain American clients.
mhm,
So since then, like, as Japanese corporation is becoming bigger and bigger in the United States, and the big corporations such as Toyota and the Mitsubishi Corporation
mhm,
had some joint business with very traditional sushi restaurant and tempura restaurants such as Inagiku or Sushi Den.
mhm,
So such a kind of things is very strong. So now the situation is very different, but until the end of the bubble age, like
mhm.
by the beginning of the 1990s,
In the 80s,
Yeah, it is in 90s. So what I heard is that now the situation is different, but there were like more than 100 local bank in Japan, and every local bank opened their branch in New York City,
Mm.
especially in 1980s. So, and when they opened the branch, they had a very big party.
Oh.
So, they did some catering from the very expensive Japanese restaurant to the banquet space. So such a kind of corporate demand was so strong.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, and I think Boston also have a considerable population of Japanese people,
Mm.
especially in 1980s. But the
Yes, there was
yeah,
a restaurant called, I never been there. Yeah,
uh,
it probably closed before I came here in
yeah,
1992. The name is Suntory, and then
oh
that
yeah, yeah,
was, yeah,
yeah, I
that
have that.
existed in the same way. But
Mm,
after that, the same thing happened in New York, but in Boston, like not many companies came back since then.
So
So,
it's
yeah.
so that's one thing. I think, from my point of view, I don't want to really put my opinion because it can be offensive to some people restaurant. But in general, number wise, a number of people to the number of restaurant is much bigger in New York.
mm,
So in New York, compare New York to Boston, New York restaurant can choose their concept or even customers.
mm,
But like in Boston, we can't. We and then we I think Takeshi-san knows about this marketing point, but we have to be more generic
Oh yeah,
before
yeah, yeah,
people
yes,
are
agree.
conservative.
mhm,
Yes.
And then Boston people just try to get something like authentic or something eccentric uh, in New York.
Mm,
mhm,
So and then New York is close enough
mhm.
not to have that in Boston.
mm.
So people basically don't need that in Boston. And
Yeah,
then
so
I admit, and
so yeah, I understand. Um, so especially in New York City, you can open the very specialized restaurant, like
Mm,
only tempura restaurant, or only
mhm.
yes,
soba restaurant, because
yes.
there are so many
Many
existing
people.
Japanese
Yeah.
restaurants. You can
Yeah.
focus on one
Yeah,
thing.
but each of them have the enough clientele size
Yes,
in
yes.
New York, which we don't
Mm,
Uh-huh.
in Boston.
mm.
Yes.
Can't just compare the number of restaurants between New York and then
No.
Boston.
No.
Mhm.
It's like people are much, like number of people much smaller in
Mhm,
Boston, and in Maine, uh, so less amount of the restaurant, but not too less amount of people.
Mhm.
So
mhm.
that's why, like I don't say Maine is like New York, but compared to Boston, it's easier to market over there.
You mean
Boston's
Port and
really
Portland,
hard.
Maine? Yeah,
Yes,
Portland, Portland,
yes,
Maine. So
Portland, Maine.
yes,
It's
yeah.
really hard to market. It's a particular thing is in Boston,
Mhm,
except being generic. Being generic is a way to win in a
mhm.
businessman.
Yeah.
So I'm usually a loser, but
I wouldn't say that,
yeah,
OJ. Yeah,
but
no.
that's the how to say, that's your ballpark, so
I mean that makes a lot of sense because again, it's just to my point earlier that there's a lot of not as many people in New York, but there are a lot of people in the Boston area that have are foodies and have a good knowledge, but there's just not as many as in New York. Or,
mm,
but I guess that's maybe it's not part of your study. I would be interested, Takeshi-san, to see the differences between Boston, and Portland, Maine, which is yeah, it's a much smaller city, but certainly this food scene is quite astounding there. I know
Wow.
Yoji was saying one of the best places to buy sake
Mhm.
There's a store there, right, Yoji, that has so many varieties. I looked at the website and I was astounded because he said, well, I asked him, well, where in Boston should I go buy something? He says, no, go to Maine, go to Portland, Maine. There's this place there. And I'm like, wow, so I guess the question is, why is that, why is there a difference there? But that's probably beyond your study, but it's, as the difference, you're also asking the differences in New England. I live in northern New England, and so Boston, Massachusetts, and southern is really different, and our areas are pretty sparsely populated too. So and that's part of the reason why I've teamed up with Yoji to see if we can bring Japanese cuisine, washoku cuisine up into the northern parts of New England, and see how that settles and how people are. I think they'll become very popular in the places that we go to. So, but anyway, I think. My gosh, we're probably almost 2 hours into the to our talk. I think we can continue on, or we can because this is a fascinating conversation. Do you have questions for Yoji?
Yeah, let me
You always have
ask
questions.
let me
what would
ask
you
this.
ask?
I ask in the
Okay,
rehearsal.
go ahead and ask.
Yeah. By the way, like please include this kind of marketing the fact and the images for this question. Like it's like why people suddenly start slurping ramen
I'm in that category.
yeah,
I slept in that.
because of movie Tampopo. Like
Yes.
once people watch
Okay.
Tampopo, before that, like people say, "Whoa, like where's spoon?
Mhm.
Where's spoon? Where's my
Yeah.
spoon?" People are
Yeah.
so like upset about the serving ramen without spoon.
Mhm.
But after not everybody watching Tampopo, but like people start saying Tampopo, Tampopo. What is that? What is that? And
Mhm.
then the people explain,
Mm.
whoa, okay. And then now we have the tablet on hand always, so people can have access to all these information. And then a lot of people like just watch the Tampopo at the same time. And then, whoa, okay, you cannot ask spoon anymore. Like we gotta swap this way because everybody swap this way in a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that kind of like big band type of marketing is very important
Yeah.
to introduce like a certain culture. So but that's in America, right? But how about the Ichiju Sansai
Mhm.
traditional culture in Japan right
Mhm.
now when everybody goes to konbini,
Mhm.
or it's like a chain restaurant, not necessary to serve the Ichiju Sansai, or like not necessarily serving healthy food combination. Is there any movement culture?
I think we talked about that earlier with Takeshi-san. I mean,
Mhm.
we were talking about Ichiju Sansai, and he
Mhm.
brought out the movement about Ichiju Isai. Is that correct? So
Oh yes,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
uh,
So yes,
it's
the very famous chef, celebrity chef in Japan called Doi-san, Yoshiharu
mm,
Doi,
mm, mm,
published a book titled like the how about the Ichiju Isai, or one soup, one meal is good enough
mm,
instead of one meal and three meals. So I think this is the situation in Japan. So the traditional family has housewives,
mm,
and but now the husband and wife is working outside, and it's very difficult to consume time for the cooking.
mm,
And it's also a kind of obsolete idea that women should be skillful to
mm,
make a various kind of the meals in an efficient and effective way. So that's why so people were thinking to that the okay, it's having good food is very important, but why don't you prepare so many different things in one meal?
Mhm.
So think about the quality of life. So you just keep in the kitchen and spend many hours. That is not a good idea. So just make simple meal with one soup and one meal is good
Mm.
enough. This is his idea, and it became a kind of popularity in
Mhm.
Japan. So I think the starting point is quite different. So if you want to introduce one soup and three meals here in the United States, this is really, I should say, reasonable idea because the if we want to make the dietary habit here more healthier, so this is very good idea. But the situation is very different between Japan and the United States.
Mm.
So
But Ichiju Sansai culture should be from Japan. And
yeah,
now it's
so it is something idea now has a kind of negative connotation in Japan sometimes, not always. Because
uh-huh.
that means that means you have to prepare three different meals.
Mm,
So it is considered as a kind of rule
mm,
for the
Mhm.
preparation of the meals.
mm,
So you know, originally I think it means the having various kind of the food ingredients might be contribute to the your happiness and healthy health. That's the original idea, I think.
mm.
But now in Japan, why so many different meals making from scratch?
Mm.
So this is a burden for the especially for female
Mhm.
who
Mm.
have to prepare meals for
Oh.
her family. So that's why. So um, sometimes I see Doi-san's Twitter and some short video on
Mhm.
YouTube, and he cook some very simple miso soup, and he even say that you can put some Japanese chicken, fried chicken, or karaage into the miso soup. Yeah,
Wow.
so this is incredible for regular American, sorry, Japanese people. But yeah, I understand that. Yeah, the soup might be tasty because of the oil of the
Because oil,
fried
yeah,
chicken.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the his idea is that you don't have to stick to the common sense.
Mm.
Or
Yeah,
tradition.
yeah,
Tradition,
tradition. Yeah, yeah.
yes.
So I think
That
it's
that's
like,
actually that's what actually what happened in Edo era, huh?
oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. They totally broke down the all those rules and regulations
Mm.
from the Honzen Ryori and then Chakai Seki. So it's like,
I see.
we're free. But yeah, I'm very fascinated about the it's like karaage in miso soup, and then I
Mhm.
think in a way it makes sense. I
Mhm.
just hope like we don't get bad idea from the United States, but but yeah, that's very interesting. And then really interesting part I think is
What's that?
it's like especially for you guys watching the Japanese video, right? Video by Japanese people, and
Mhm.
then like so people put a video. It means that like they want to introduce something very important or
Mhm. Mhm.
something really good. So like we can see Ichiju Sansai or even more or some kind of technique and other stuff making from scratch and like the purchasing or like fishing and blah blah
Mhm.
blah. And
Mhm.
then people may think that all Japanese do that, just like people used to
No.
think that like Japanese eat sushi every single day.
Mhm.
So I don't say it's propaganda,
I
but
think my
like
friends think that. That's what they
yeah,
said to me when
but that's
we're gonna eat
misunderstood.
sushi every day. I'm like,
Yeah, but
no, I
that's
don't.
misunderstanding. But at the same
Yes.
time, it's true that Japanese people tend to cook from scratch compared to what it is in the United States,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? So I feel the same thing happens in the especially American restaurant. So American restaurant, like in modern time after new American cuisine, we've been making a lot of things from scratch. Unagi sauce in American restaurant, we didn't, we don't cook. I mean, we don't use bottled unagi sauce. I mean,
Mm,
hopefully even now, we use scraps vegetable from scraps from vegetables,
mm,
and then like some sugar, mirin, sake, soy sauce to make the it's like original like teriyaki or kabayaki or unagi sauce with the unagi bone, which I do too. Um, so, but then that's very labor intense in the
yeah,
restaurant.
yeah.
And then to serve that for the price, it doesn't make sense anymore. And then that's a problem. And so now restaurants think that why not this? Either using all the manufacturer product or hopefully choosing great manufacturer product. So that's why I say Nakashoku and all these producers and company are hopefully creating the with less chemicals or
Yes.
healthier, more natural ingredients.
Mhm.
I think it's much more important. And I always look for, as a chef, I'm not like, I don't have big proud of making everything from scratch and I do everything, I make everything. No, 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 no. I always put myself in the position to introduce, uh, great chefs, great producer, great companies product,
Mhm.
to people most. But if the product has a lot of chemicals, I barely use it.
Mhm.
So I think yeah, that's a point. And Roddy, like it sounds really funny. Why Japanese people say that? It's like, what's a labor? I mean, that's your culture, right? But it's like Japanese, at my house too. Like we basically make everything from scratch.
I think
That's
that's
labor.
and
That's
that's
labor intense.
yeah, but I think that's something very novel to us here, and it kind of ties into this notion of authentic cuisine, making things from scratch, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think coming looking at things from American and Westernized eyes, to that for us it's kind of novel, exotic. I don't like to use that word, but and to you, growing up in that culture, it's just what people did, and so um I don't know. It's so I guess we as Yoji and I are trying to introduce Ichiju Sansai, or maybe it'll become Ichiju Isai at this point, to American palace, American audience, and so I know it's yeah, but it's hard to tell people, as Takeshi-san is say,
Mhm.
there's a negative connotation because it's tied to a gender inequalities and so forth. But I guess that's something we need to share too, and as we educate people more about washoku and Japanese cuisine and so forth. So, I
Mm-mm-mm.
better
Uh,
give Takeshi-san the
mm,
last word because
mm.
we're really going to go. This is the longest podcast we've ever done. So,
You're not gonna ask the big question at the end.
and the big question: what's the future of Japanese cuisine in America? No, I'm going to ask him after he finishes his book.
Okay,
He's going to say
okay,
we're
that's
gonna
fair.
we're going to promote his book when it comes out, and then
Oh,
I will
thank you
ask him
very
that
much.
question again.
Yeah.
So be prepared. So I'm going to let you have the last word, Takeshi-san. Whatever you want to say, and then I guess we're going to close this podcast for
Okay.
today. Go ahead.
Yes. So, um, because the this is also the model of immigration.
Mm, mm, mm,
So the thing I want to pursue is one of the thing is the difference of the East Coast and the West Coast.
mm,
So West Coast have a long history of Japanese American,
mhm,
like even now, Yonsei or Gosei,
mhm,
fourth or fifth generation.
mhm,
And so that means the people, the ancestors of a Japanese immigrant were born and raised in the United States. So they don't necessarily know the situation, current situation in Japan. Also, they can get the information from internet or other things at this time, but on the other hand, especially in New York City, there are some Japanese businessmen who stay only like 3 or 5 years and go back to Japan, and then new person will move to New York City. So the difference between the East and West is that East course have some Japanese population who knows what is happening in Japan. But on the West Coast, the Japanese American, of course, some of them are very knowledgeable about the current situation, but not many people. So I think doing the Japanese cuisine business might be different by coast and coast.
That's interesting, because
Yeah.
I never considered sort of the Japanese diaspora, excuse me, in immigration, because I lived in Hawaii, and most of my classmates were of Japanese descent. Almost all of them were Japanese descent. So that's actually kind of intriguing. Yoji, we'll have to get Takeshi-san back again to continue talking to us. This is actually better than us talking all the time, right?
Yeah, only between you and me every
you
time.
and me, because I don't know anything, and Takeshi-san knows a lot more than I do. I'm learning from everybody. But well, I believe, as I promised, we should close things and let everyone go for this episode. But Takeshi-san, Takeshi Matsui, Professor of Marketing, School of Business Administration at Hitotsubashi University in Japan. He's also a visiting scholar at Harvard Jinshin Institute. Thank you so much for this fascinating conversation.
Thank you, Takeshi-san.
And
thank you so
for
much
putting up with us for how many hours now. But I hope this won't be the last time I get to talk to you, and I look forward to meeting you in person before you return to Japan. So I will say to everyone, we usually say matane, sayonara, goodbye,
matane.
and we hope to see everyone, or see. I don't think we'll see. I guess we'll see everyone again soon. So, okay, bye for now.